Welcome to the first joint meetup between Builders Zürich and GDG Zürich. So at least we've got one thing in our name the same. It's a really interesting subject, I think, for everybody here, because it's like coming from Google, but it's also going to work on iOS and Android. So it's going to be a pretty cool subject. And they've been telling me all about it, so I'm pretty excited to hear more. Maybe I can quickly introduce the two speakers. You can do that. Okay, so Patrice is the one without the beard, and he's gonna maybe want to introduce yourself quickly, Patrice.
I'm Patrice, and I do Android development for right now 6 to 7 years. I don't know, I can't remember, to be honest. I started with Android at 1.8 something, and yes. I got my passion there during my study time, and the passion never left me, so I do that for my living right now.
Okay, and then Renato, without beard in the photo, but with beard in person. So,
yes.
Renato, introduce yourself.
Yes, as you said, I'm Renato. I do iOS development. Since now, I touched it first in 2012. That was around iOS 5, so when Arc came up, yes. Yeah, so.
Wow, it's been a while. And so, me, I'm John Reardon, and I used to be a developer, and I kind of built up this community when I was finishing up developing. And yeah, I just love to see what's going on, so I keep organizing these events, so welcome here. I guess the event's partially sponsored by Swisscom and partially sponsored by Google, right? As the
actually, GDG.
Okay, GDG, right. And the room and the space is provided and security by Swisscom, so it's a true joint effort. Okay, so I think without further ado, we'll jump into the presentation if you guys are ready. Yes. Maybe just for your information, we're going to record the whole presentation. So it's the first time I've got it really working because we're doing screen capture, video capture, and audio capture from the sound system. So let's hope it works out well, and we'll publish it on the various meetups after we're ready.
Great.
Okay, so off you go, guys.
Thank you so much. You guys can see it? So la la, or?
That's okay. I mean, that's
okay. Fair enough.
We'll see more if it's gone bad. Okay. So, welcome to our presentation about Flutter. So, just for my curious, how many of you have just heard about Flutter and didn't try it out yet?
Ah.
Okay, perfect. Then it's perfect for you. Awesome. Okay. That's for the agenda. Why Flutter and Dart, and short demo, and then Flutter in the wild. So Renato, if I told you it's going to be the next new awesome cross-platform framework, it's going to be just amazing.
Yeah, what would be my reaction? Yeah. Not yet another cross-platform framework. I mean, look at this slide. How many frameworks do we already have, and how many tools are available to share code? There's like, recently most popular, I guess, is React Native, coming up a lot. There are tools to share code like J to Objective-C or other cross-platform frameworks. So my first reaction will be, not again. I mean, we have so many, and to be honest, none of them really convinced me so much so far. So yeah, what is the promise this time, Patrice? Tell me more about it.
This time, everything is going to be different. This time, your productivity is going to seriously go to the moon. And the coolest thing is, absolutely coolest thing is, you can use all your tools that you already know.
Oh, I mean, Xcode, right?
No, I'm just kidding. That's not that one.
No, I was just kidding too. I mean, real tools, right? We want real tools to be able to use. So IntelliJ.
So in fact, it's every IntelliJ. You can even use WebStorm if you like to, if you like kind of come from the web development. And for the Android guys, you can use Android Studio. There's a plugin for that. And right now, even for VS Code. And if you don't know it, Google just make an agreement. Was one guy who was developing the VS Code plugin, and that was so great and was so popular. Then Google tried to make a deal with his company, and right now he's working 100% on that plugin just to support Flutter, just for 1 year on Google side, just to get how much effort's gone in that.
Okay, but which language do I have to use then? What language do you write Flutter? I mean, I like my Swift, I like my Objective-C. Some people don't, but I like it. So,
yeah, it's Dart. I mean, I know
Dart.
I know. Dart, it's that. No, it isn't. In fact, in Google, it's the most second popular language beside Java. It's Dart, and yes, it's pretty easy to learn, to be honest.
Okay, but no, not yet another language. I mean, Swift popped up, and I like it so much. And
don't forget Kotlin.
Yeah, you have Kotlin, right? So why Dart? Maybe we find some points in this presentation afterwards.
I will maybe show, but first of all, let me show how easy it is to write and read Dart.
Okay. Okay, demo time.
So now
Let's
we're gonna do what now we should do live coding. So we prepared already some project, because I think now it's not very interesting to see how.
Yeah, we don't see it.
You don't see it? Oh, I'm sorry. Where's? I'm just looking for my cursor right now. I have no
Cursor
idea.
problems.
Somewhere. Do you see the cursor there? No.
That's pretty hard.
Kannst du mal.
Oh, sorry. So maybe you guys, how many of you have ever tried cross-platform approaches? And how many of those like their experience? 1, 2 guys. Yeah. I'm on the same side, or I was kind of. I mean, we will see where Flutter goes, right? In the end, after this talk, I'm happy if you try it out yourself. I mean, there you can't bypass trying it yourself. With trying yourself, you will eventually see if it's something for you. And if you don't like it, well, then just don't write it, right? Okay, I guess.
We found the cursor.
You found the cursor? That's great. Okay, that's good.
So
it looks far better now.
Back in the game.
Back in the game, right?
So can everyone read it? More or less? Less.
Less than more?
No, it's IntelliJ, but you can, yeah. Yeah, but we need then that, otherwise we can't. Yeah.
We need the simulator, right? Maybe it's better with another theme.
So. And bam. we need to emulate, otherwise it doesn't make fun.
All right.
So right now, what you see here right now, it's the typical, let's say, the hello world, or from any React application. That's what you get if you start your first Flutter project. There's a wizard for the IntelliJ, or you can even use the CLI. We don't cover that here. It gets pretty good documented on the Flutter website, which is flutter.io. And yes, let's first look here on the project side. Even you don't see it.
Maybe you have to put it more into the middle because we don't see it. Yeah.
Okay, I see. Okay, that's just a brief. It's not very interesting here. Just for the Android and iOS guys. They are just normal Android or iOS project as you know it, and it's kind of the same approach as React Native. So, but talking about React Native, what it's amazing about React Native, it's the stuff that's how fast you develop that. You know, if the people ever try that, you can just with the hot reload, and we got the same thing here. So, Renato, you come from Bern, yes, and I think it's maybe a little bit strange for you to have this Flutter application in the beautiful white blue from Zurich.
Yes, I mean, what does the app do first? It's a simple counter app, right?
Absolutely, yes.
But as you already said, I'm from Bern, and yeah, those white and blue stuff, could you make me feel a little bit more home? Like, could you make maybe the app bar maybe red?
Absolutely. And if you're just wondering from these colors are right now the material colors, the Android guys just should know the theming, and that's provided from Google.
So
voila.
There you go. It's like in React Native, you have hot reload. That's actually also a reason why they chose Dart to be their language. They actually considered about a dozen languages for Flutter, but eventually ended up in Dart. But why is this like that? I mean, it has many aspects, but one of those aspects is you have JIT compilation, just-in-time compilation. So you have very fast developer cycles. You just can hot reload the stuff and voila, just change color and see the result. You don't have to go through your native developer cycle where you have to fix the bug, compile again, waiting for the simulator to start up, and just see that you change the color to the wrong one and start over again. So that's pretty nice.
So you can see that on this debug side. What does it mean? Flutter, it's if you didn't on the debug modus, Flutter deploys Dart VM with it. Where's the JIT it's gonna happen? So everything, it doesn't matter how big your app is. It just deploys the delta of your application. So if you write something as let's say the red, only the red it's gonna deploy it over the wire.
So and the second part is like if you want to have a build build for production, we can do ahead of time compilation. So in the end, we have RM code, like native code. We have a real native app in the end. So that's one thing why they choose Dart. You have both worlds. You have the fast developer cycles, and in the end, you have the native app. And we'll show you how this is possible a little bit later, but let's continue with some demo time. I mean, I know, I feel like a little bit more home right now, but the fat button over there, maybe, I mean, Bern has like this red, yellow, blackish color. So maybe you can turn it, the fat button, into a yellow button, Patrice?
Sure, I do. But first, let me a little bit explain what you see here. Here you see this. As you see, everything it's like in React, everything is functional. Right now we don't have functions. We do have in Flutter widgets. Everything it's a widget. Even your app, it's a widget. It's kind of the same approach we have got in React. That everything it's a component, it's a functional component. We got the same here, but there's more kind of everything. It's an object, a widget. So here we got this flood button, and right now. And as you can see, you have got all this nice auto-completion. I could do my right, but right now, yes, you see, we have got the problem with the white plus. Then now I could change the icon color, which would be nice. But right now, the even nicer way is just use the material one.
So maybe you know material design a little bit. You can also define your primary color and your Asian color. So everything is taken from the framework there. Actually, Google says Flutter has like one of the best material design implementations they have in their company. So especially the Android guys, I guess, will feel pretty much at home there, right?
And as you see, the framework even handles the contrast challenging stuff. The plus was white, so it changed to black. It's nicer. But you know, I mean, that's nice. I mean, we can just change colors, but we can even change behaviors on the fly. You know, as you know, we just count right now up. As lives goes up and down, we can even count down. And then just for that, let's just add another fat button.
Yeah, sometimes life can't just go up, right? So let's maybe add a button which reflects life a little bit more. Like sometimes it can get down, right? So there will be another button. All right. Oh, okay. I mean, you guys must be thinking, Zurich, maybe Bern is strange. Okay, maybe, but we don't. Oh, that's nice. How did he do that?
So what I've done here right now, the cool thing is about widgets, because everything is a widget. Usually the API accepts a widget. That what does mean? If you just have to add a fat button on that application API would say, hey, I expect a fat button, but in fact it says, hey, that widget, it's going to be positioned on the point where the fat button is going to be accepted. So what we have done right now, we added a column with 2 fat buttons on that, and usually the column takes the whole screen, that's the whole thing here, and puts every widget in every child on the top of the column. So, and with that, I said the main exit element, it's the end. For those of you which are familiar with Flexbox, you're kind of familiar with that, because it's similar to Flexbox. The column, and you got columns and rows and even flags with that, which is totally copy of Flexbox.
Yes, but I mean, those buttons, actually there should be a minus sign right now.
Well, and right now I add a child. A child has to be can be anything. As again, as long as it is a widget, and even icons or widgets. They expect icon states, and we got remove. I think yes. Here we go.
All right, hot deploy, and there you go. So they look like, I mean, they're there, but what about padding? I mean, they look really squished together. Can you maybe add some padding right there, or maybe use shortcuts?
Absolutely. With those guys which already know IntelliJ, or as I call it, Alt-Enter development, you have the same here. With Alt-Enter, you got your context menu, which has the most important things like wrapping the stuff in a widget or adding a widget. And right now, I add padding, and even stuff like layout, stuff like padding and margins. Even those things are widgets in Flutter. So everything, seriously, everything is a widget.
So hot reload or you want to adjust the padding? So we say only,
and let's do
bottom 8. All right, there you go. So right now we have 2 fab buttons, but one of them doesn't have like the functionality we want to, right? Patrice?
Yes, we can add even right now here. Now we're gonna have for that to add functionality, because we need to modify our state. That's the same approach as React takes everything on the widget. In fact it's stateless, but
there are actually two kind of widgets we can have. We have the stateless widgets and the stateful widgets. And as they say, stateless widget, it doesn't change anything on the screen. So in this case, we have a stateful widget, and Patrice is now going to code a function. And if you did React Native or React programming, you see there the set state method really just alters the state, and you tell the framework to re-render like the diff, and there you go.
So what you right now see, everyone knows familiar with IntelliJ. You see all this nice tooling support you got from IntelliJ, and you're used to IntelliJ for Java and Android development or Kotlin development. You see that this one it's used. So even when Flutter right now it's on.
All right, you add the decrement function there
on beta,
and there you go.
You have the nice support from IntelliJ, and as you see, the app has never lost the state. We keep that, and why it's important. Just imagine if you're working a kind of in a banking environment, and you have always do this QR code logging stuff on your development cycle, and then you can keep logged in and focus on your stuff, or on your screen, which right now is our interest. You can keep that. You can keep logged in.
So what you actually have is not hot reload. It's more like stateful hot reload. So the app actually, just captures the state and holds it even for your reloads when you change something in your app. All right. I guess that's it for our little demo. Let's switch back to our presentation. Okay, that's nice, Patrice. But could you tell me a little bit more how it works under the hood? How is this happening all?
Well, that's, as already mentioned, Flutter was heavily influenced by React, because React did a pretty great job about mutating the state and do a lot of hard work stuff behind it. And in fact, you have got 2 trees in Flutter 2. Okay, if you got serious, you have got 3, but let that by the side. One is the widget tree, and the other one is the render tree. The render trees are in fact the real widgets which you see on the device or on the screen with their size and position on the screen. And the widget tree, it's what you saw on the source code kind of. and it kind of describes the layout. So if you change the state, it looks, hey, okay, I have to change on the render tree and only change those things.
All right, but how is it different from React Native besides being something JavaScript and the other one being Dart?
Well, the big point is you don't depend on any OM widgets. What does it mean? You don't have a UI view, I think that's called in iOS, or any text view on Android or stuff like that. You just ignore that, and you just deploy with your app the whole render engine. So
that's like they do it in game development, like Unity, right?
Yes, absolutely. That's where they kind of get inspired, because I was looking around when they did that, and was, hey, they are pretty good cross-platform apps. They are games. So this kind of these things is you put all your render engine, all your which you have written with the app, and that's only with an overhead of about 6 or 7 megabytes right now.
Oh, that's great. I remember, how much does Xamarin have, right? Like 50?
Something,
Yeah.
last time I tried it out.
And I guess it's double for React Native, around 12 or something.
I mean, yes, I'm not sure. I'm
totally
not
sure.
I'm not sure about that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, but I mean, I still want to have some platform-specific stuff. How do I get there, right? I mean, there's a lot of abstraction you can make, but in the end, there's still different hardware. And how do I do that, right?
Well, they call it channels.
Channels.
Channels is kind of interface you define, and you can do just only kind of primitive types get over the bridge, or it's called the React Native developer. It's kind of the bridge of Flutter, but it's only kind of these things we got kind of location, contact, stuff like that.
Okay, so you access the services.
Absolutely.
Okay, I see. So I still have the possibility to write my native code, right?
Absolutely, because in fact Flutter is just in Android an activity, a Flutter activity it's called, and it takes the whole screen for you, and it only takes control of each pixel on that screen, and it renders all the thing. So if you have something that's kind of a SDK on your company, you can wrap, and if you have an SDK for iOS and Android, you can just wrap this API. You should kind of make the same API calls then, and then you can use it on Flutter. In fact, Google does that with the Firebase API. And which I just discovered last week was the camera plugin. They made an app that even you can render the preview of the camera in your Flutter app. If someone's interesting, I have the demo on my phone. I can show you that after.
All right, cool. So that's how it works. That's all fine, but yeah, it's still beta, and it just turned beta, right?
Beta 2.
Oh, beta 2. Sorry. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. But maybe you don't know it. The Google AdWords team, it's the whole AdWords stuff, it's totally written in Flutter. The story behind it, it's kind of which we got told, it's that the AdWords team have done the Android development and says, okay, right now we have to do the iOS development.
And they didn't find any iOS guys.
And then the Flutter team jumps in and say, okay, let's try with Flutter. And they tried Flutter. And in fact, when they finished development with iOS, they even replaced the native development of AdWords, the native app, with the Flutter app or the AdWords. So right now, it's a pretty mission-critical app for Google, and with over 5 million installs. That's only on Android, and they did. And then we got, I don't say that word because I was
Posse.
and they did the Hamilton app with Flutter because they had a pretty short timeline, about 3 months. And for the Hamilton, for those guys which are already on the US, Hamilton, it's a big thing. It's in the US, that's a musical, and they have a pretty unique UI. It's neither material or iOS style guide. It's pretty kind of their stuff, and they did it with Flutter. Okay, to be honest, they get backed up on the Flutter team because on this time Flutter was still in alpha, but they was there. So for Hamilton was even a mission-critical app too.
So yeah, maybe Posse is like an agency which they do apps for different companies, and they thought like we have this tough timeline, we need to get there fast, so they chose Flutter in the end to fulfill this. And maybe a side note there, for Dart, Fuchsia is also using Dart, right?
Yes, and Flutter. In fact, Fuchsia, so it's going to be the main UI framework for Fuchsia. It's Flutter. And another side note, even the agency right now is Search has an open position for a Flutter developer.
So there, I guess that's the first Flutter
in the wild,
position in the wild there, right? And the tool is still in beta. I think that's kind of crazy, right? Yeah, that's all good, Patrice. But yeah, it's all now rainbows and unicorns. What's the bad part? What's the thing that's bad about it?
You know,
there must be something, right?
Absolutely. Where light is shadow, and right now you don't have a native maps widget. That means if you have something on a map, you have to do it kind of native.
You have to do it right native.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. There is some plugins which use kind of the web API, but I think it's not the same experience as the native Google API SDK. And we did the experiment.
Oh yeah, internationalization. I have to say, I tried it. It was pain in the ass, and they still have like, I don't know. I didn't download lately the latest alpha or whatsoever, and they still had this bug on iOS where it didn't change the language on the simulator. So you would have to actually deploy it on the device to see this change. So yeah, I mean, for us, it's like in Switzerland, where we have so many languages, it's kind of critical. And I sometimes observe this a lot when you have products from the US. It's like, oh yeah, there's this thing, internationalization. Yeah, we'll do that feature after some other features. And yeah, it takes some time, but it works. Right now, it's just really, yeah, it's not really the most convenient way to do it.
And the last thing, they right now don't have a native, with native I mean in Flutter, web widget or web view.
Who wants a web view anyway?
So let's right now cut it down and takeaways. For us, I think we played right now nearly 1 year with Flutter, and the most productive thing is the hot reload. I think usually we have measured it. It's about 2 minutes for average development. Even doesn't matter if iOS or Android. From you change something and until you deploy it on the device or emulator, to maximum 2 seconds if you make a full restart from your application on Flutter. Then from full control of the widgets, I think for myself, as an Android developer, don't be dependent on the next support library. widget stuff, and which it's not always the best thing. And right now we are working on our app for our next conference. Thank you. Which right now it's pretty cool for the code sharing stuff. And yes,
the cool thing about the code sharing stuff is you can sort out your business logic, and you could use actually Angular Dart on the web to kind of share the code over there. It's like, I mean, you have it in React Native where you share your JavaScript stuff. Here it's the same with Dart and Angular Dart. You can really share the code between your mobile apps and your website in sort of. And the cool thing about this, there's actually a pretty good article about Flutter and a company which changed from doing their apps both natively and having a web portal and switching everything to Dart because they just profited so much from sharing the knowledge from each other. Like they could merge their teams, and they said like knowledge sharing was like at an all-time high. So I think that's a pretty nice thing to have, right?
Yes, absolutely. But just to be clear here, Randolph, if you kind of used to kind of this normal, let's say Angular with TypeScript, the Angular Dart thing, it's not that far. In my experience, you didn't get that nice IDE support, which you kind of use from Angular. And the developer side, it's not that fast, to be honest. But I think it's worth to try it out, at the least. If you're a kind of hobby on the weekend or a kind of experiment, you can try to share your mobile stuff and your web stuff. But they right now even have to compile Dart to JS compiler, the new one, the DDTC, which kind of puts out readable JavaScript for you. So it's maybe you can try make an experiment to just write your business log as a JavaScript library.
All right.
Yes, that would be from our side right now. So thank you for your attention. And thank you that you come in this beautiful weather.
Yeah, despite this beautiful weather, right? So now, yeah, questions. I guess there must be a lot. Oh, yeah. Sir?
Can you say a bit more about using Flutter for iOS development? Like what tools you need, and how do you manage to have it look more like iOS apps, so not material design?
Yes, actually, Flutter, yes, that's the perfect slide for it. So as you can see here, there's the rendering engine, and that's the framework, the Flutter framework. And over, you have this widget layer here. And up on top, they built their material widgets. And besides having their material widgets, they have also something called the Cupertino widgets. And the Cupertino widgets are the iOS specific widgets. So everything that's in there looks like iOS. Actually, they did, I know it from the overscroll they have in Android, like the scrolling. You have, when you scroll up, right, you have this, you don't have this bouncing in Android. You have this overglowing shine in Android. Actually, what they did with the bounce and the overglow, they took a high-speed camera and took frame by frame and tried to I think they, Patrice, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, I think they wrote a machine learning script that spit out their algorithm for this overglow, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and in the end, I think it was more performant than their actual implementation on Android.
I think it was just simpler. It was just simpler.
Oh, okay, it's just simpler. Right, so in the end, you have your Cupertino widgets. They're not that far yet there, but they're getting there. They're just doing their material first. But in the end, you could build on that whatever you like to. I mean, in the end, you have the full control over every pixel in the end. So if you have a special CI for your company, like corporate identity, or you don't want to follow a specific guideline, which I don't advise you, I think it's good to appreciate the human interface guidelines you have from iOS development and everything, but they're getting there. And the cool thing about everything is like with a simple line of code, you just switch behavior between devices. So you have an Android device, you have the bouncing if you like to, and vice versa. I know I wouldn't recommend it. Users they know their interfaces, and they want an iOS feeling on iOS and an Android feeling on Android. So, but you can do whatever you like to there.
Maybe one thing, if you've had the idea that you okay, right now it's write a Flutter app which looks like iOS on iOS and Android on Android, that's the wrong approach, Flutter. Then you kind of misuse it. Because the idea is that you kind of, because you have to do more at the end, because you have always to switch. You have to check, okay, on which platform do I am and which switching I'm going to render. The idea behind it, it's seriously about opinionated UIs. I've worked right now for 6 years on agencies, and it's always pretty hard to convince the customer to kind of keep on the guidelines of iOS and Android, and kind of sometimes even break with the CI of the company or try to do that. And the idea is seriously about that you go and write your opinionated UIs with that. If you just say, okay, I just go with for iOS, go and use Cupertino, go for it. And if you say just, okay, I want to write for Android a material design, just then use them. But in my opinion, it's easier to say, okay, if I do for my company and I use the CI of my company, I kind of can redo the widget stuff, which does everything because it's so easy. Believe me, if you tried it three days with you, it's like, okay, I write my own widgets. It's so easy.
Are there not copyright issues when they start copying specific activities? And
I have no idea.
Well, it could be the next legal suit, right?
Maybe you have the next one coming up there. No.
They get used to it, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
I was curious how you go around the testing, mostly testing UI.
Yes.
If you can talk a little bit more about that. And I have another question as well. If you need to grow it beyond one button, your application, what architectural recipes would you apply and how they evolve, I guess?
Yes.
Very good questions.
Yes. Let's first take the testing approach. The testing thing, the cool thing is, if you write, you can test depending. You have kind of the on-device tests, which I didn't yet, to be honest. What I've done so far, it's kind of widget testing. It's the unit test kind of, if you saw the, this one, the render tree, on the test, you are able to check every single property of your widgets. So if you can kind of say, please click on it virtually, and then you can then say, it's called pump. The method is going to please test to pump it, and then it's going to change the state, and then you can test if your widget has the right or the expected property after that test. So that's a brief. If you use maybe, let's say, Android testing, which was kind of hard to do widget testing, and they even right now have on-device testing, but I can't say anything about that because I didn't test it yet, because I was really happy with the other one, to be honest. And Yes, the architecture one. That's right now
Big topic.
It's a big topic in the community right now, in the Flutter community, which is right now exploding. There is kind of the obvious thing. It's kind of, oh, it's a reactive stuff, and it's so much thing to do from React. So let's take Redux, which they are right now, in fact, Redux implementation in Dart. But there are other things like you can look at that. You can look at state scope model. Yes, thank you. And you got block, which kind of it's used by the Google team for AdWords. So right now it's kind of what's gonna try there. And
so the thing about Redux is like Dart is quite fast in allocating objects. So I guess I haven't seen any Android apps using like a Redux approach. Correct me there if I'm wrong, because like the JVM allocating objects takes some time, but the Dart is pretty fast in allocating objects, so you have lots of objects being allocated. So yeah, we will just see what kind of architecture comes up, and yeah, I mean it's still pretty early, right, for the framework, but I think Redux is kind of a natural choice there.
I think the good thing is if you take Redux, it's already pretty good documented, because about block you don't find that much thing. Which right now there is an example. We can show after that there is an architect sample from Flutter from one of the guys of the community. I think it's called Brian. I can share that after the link to his GitHub. He does this famous to-do apps with Redux, with all these different architecture components. Then you can choose. We both have chosen Redux for our next app, but because just we didn't knew better right now. So
yeah.
So we will see what's going to be after 1 year. We can say what's going to be. It's good. And I know. I'm sorry to put the spotlight on you. He uses block in his app, so maybe if you want to talk about that, yeah.
Hit this guy. All right, some more questions?
And what's the approach if you work together with designers? I mean, they know the storyboard or the XML layouts from Android. What's the approach there?
With the designer, I think it's way. The good thing is you're even. I think you're even, as you've seen, you're even faster to put that in code and reload it on the DML loader than you change your XML on Android and wait to preload. It's going to happen. If you have the mistake, you wait anyway and build its thing. And yes, I think every design, in my opinion, because I'm a developer and I love design, so I do design stuff. So I think every designer should a little bit code. That's my opinion. And so I think you could just sit beside the design and look with him what's going to happen with that. So sit side by side with the designer and go on.
Yeah, actually, I didn't try it because when I was doing Flutter stuff, I was designer myself. Designer in question marks. So yeah, I think, but I think yeah, that's a feasible approach. Just sit together with your designers and see what comes out of it.
And
just do it.
Or if your designer already has kind of your CI and your design language, I would just kind of start with very small things like icons and maybe bots and stuff like that, and implement your own widgets in your own design language, and then go to design and check with them how it's gone.
Yeah. All right.
So I have two questions.
Sure.
First one is it's just-in-time compilation. So it means like on Android you have like 2 VMs running.
Yes, that's only on development during developing. When you go build and release time, it's gets
Transpile.
Yes, it's not gets translated. It's seriously it's normal compiling to ARM code. So it's in fact you kind of the level of the NDK. So it's suited down to bare bottles.
Okay.
You don't have any VMs on there.
Okay. And the
So
second
that's
question.
just side note. The
Yeah.
scrolling it's faster on Android with Flutter than the native one.
That's good. And the second question: these platform channels, are they similar to what we have like in React Native? That there's like a queue for all this system API calls, so you can be like throttled a bit if you do too much native calls.
It's
Or is it like multi-threaded? Like it can grow.
the Dart stuff. It's single threaded. So
okay.
it could happen, but to be honest, I didn't experience yet. I even tried out the camera stuff, and to be honest, if it works with the camera, I don't know where it should work
I
anyway.
mean, if you can combine it like with other sensors, like if you do live video and also takes the accelerometer and like.
To be honest, you have to try it out.
Okay.
You have to try it out because that's something that I didn't touch too much. I wrote only just the normal things like contact and the QR code plugins for myself, and there I didn't find, and I tried the camera stuff.
Okay, thanks.
I have also two questions.
Sure.
First one is Flutter is doing its own rendering. I'm curious about how good is the accessibility support. And second one, what about other code like networking, JSON parsing, and this kind of stuff?
This accessibility, they're working on that. You call this a semantic widget. You can add some more meta information about that.
So I guess it's not there yet.
Yes, but they're working on that. It's still better. That's where now the beta comes in. And about the networking, that's some very nice stuff. You have the networking in the Flutter. You use the Dart.io package, which you have this HTTP client, and the JSON parsing. It's pretty easy done. And if you kind of come from the Java world, they have rebuilt maybe some auto value. If you say something, that's the build. That's something like the build value for Dart. So it's in Dart you have similar mechanism like the annotation processor on the Java world. They did something like that you can build your poachers and even your JSON parts like the JSON one, which is a plugin which you can just plug in that in, which does the stuff. But the easiest way, if you could just make a POC, you can just there is built-in deserializer for JSON, which gives you a normal map, which you have got your keys on in a normal map collection. But there are kind of cookbooks on the Flutter website which covers perfectly those topics. Yeah. But I would recommend the build value stuff. That's pretty cool.
Other question.
The last question from my side.
No worries.
What about the famous Android lifecycle?
Yeah. You do have life cycles, but only on the kind of stateful widgets. That you get all this, all your different states. You got the old state with you, the new states of you. But the rest, it's handled by the Flutter activity. In fact, yes, that's just handled by the Flutter activity. If you rotate, the Android guys know it. If you rotate the device, everything gets away. It keeps the stuff.
Oh, so surprising for iOS guys.
And you keep all the stuff like rotation, stuff like that. It's everything handled, which it's not yet handled. It's the on-save state. So if you kind of do in the background and come back, so just that things get lost right now. But you can handle that. Let's say if you kind of use the Redux approach, you can just kind of bring up from the disk. Other question?
Yeah, I have a question concerning multiple window apps. So how does it map multiple windows? How does it decide if it's an activity or a fragment in Java? Probably in iOS you have something different. Does it do that automatically, or do I have to set something? Or
you mean right now the picture-in-picture stuff and on Android, or when you just
just if I have an app and I have opened a different window in the app. So in Android sometimes I choose to have a fragment, or I choose to have an own activity. I don't know how you do it in iOS, but it must somehow make these decisions, right? So does it do that for you, or do you have to say something about it in the mapping, or?
In fact, if you want to have kind of a fragment of it, you would go to the native code. If I understand you right.
So you cannot make a multiple window in.
As you can't because it kind of breaks the approach from Flutter.
Okay.
Because it takes the responsibility for your whole screen. In the end, it's just a normal activity.
Okay.
So if you want to make an overlay over there, then you have to go back, kind of use stuff in the native stuff, and then you can kind of cover the Flutter activity with a fragment activity. I guess, to be honest, because I didn't try it.
Okay. But that means you could never really replace a native app approach with Flutter, right? You could never eliminate Android.
No, that's absolutely not the approach. Absolutely not.
So it's just the idea you write the activities and then you combine them in the native app? Or?
So you can make this, yes, absolutely. So if you write your activity in a Flutter application, it's in the end just a normal Android application with one activity.
Okay.
It's the Flutter activity.
Or a UI view controller.
Or UI view controller.
Okay.
So then everything what's happened, kind of the Flutter universe happens in there. And if you want to have something else which don't get covered by the Flutter framework, you have to go to your native framework.
Okay.
It's not mentioned to replace Android or iOS. It is kind of utilize you as a developer. In fact, it just kind of if you have an Android and iOS team, it's more about like enhance your developers to do more together.
Okay. Good. Thanks.
And in the end, we will see where it leads, right?
Is it easy to apply when I make like plugins on Android side and iOS side?
Sorry, I didn't get the question.
When I make plugins for
plugins.
Yes, you have to do it twice. Absolutely. Yes, that's then where you go. The downside, you have to write. If let's say the QR code plugin, which I just did quick and dirty, you have to do it twice, of course, because there's right now where you hit the native stuff.
Yeah, you have to do it for Android and iOS. But you choose Swift, Objective-C, or Java, or Kotlin.
Yes, so we didn't show that, but if you do it on IntelliJ, if you start a new project, you have in the wizard you get even ask which language should your project be based. So if you say, okay, I would like to have my Android on Kotlin and my iOS project on Swift, so it's already got set up for you.
Thanks.
More questions? Sure. One
coming.
front.
You showed how you're able to add native code to a Flutter app. How about vice versa? If I have a big app that's developed both in iOS and Android, can I add new parts with Flutter to both?
Theoretically, yes. I didn't try it yet, and that's something because the brownfield approach. Yes, that's something that I'm very curious about right now. But no, I didn't try that. So
Not yet.
Not yet. It is theoretically possible because it's at the end just a Flutter activity. But you have to kind of right now do all the reverse engineering, kind of start a new project and look what they all added, which all library, and you have to do it by yourself. So that's right now no easy way to do it.
Any more questions? I have one quick question. Imagine
Sure.
our last presentation, next one will be on ARKit. How would I use ARKit with this platform?
I mean, there you will have to write the plugin for iOS and for Android. AR Core you would have to use, but I mean, I wouldn't try that yet.
All right, so
I saw some TensorFlow stuff being released. So there's machine learning with Flutter on both platforms, but AR, I haven't tried it, so I can't really say something about that. But in the end, it must be a plugin, right?
And I think right now the goal, the aim for Flutter apps, kind of the business apps, you know, where you have once right now my kind of share to Android and iOS, maybe because of security reason you can't use any web stuff. So that's where you go with right now with Flutter. AR stuff, and it's like all the bleeding edge. I wouldn't use it because Flutter itself is bleeding edge. So I don't know if it's useful to kind of combine bleeding edge with bleeding edge. It's going to get even more bleeding. So
very bloody, right?
It's very bloody there.
Yes, that's
okay. So I mean, basically, it's really for doing reasonably simple apps.
Yes, but to be honest, I played around with animations with Flutter, and that's pretty cool. And I even saw guys, they totally implement the whole particle system with Flutter. So for that stuff. And I think the cool thing is if you use Flutter, something like Flutter, and if you are sure that on both platforms, animation looks the same. Right.
And if you want to do a web app, I mean, how well does that work right now when you compile it into JS? Is that something which is really bloody, really extra bloody edged, or you don't seem to be recommending that, right? Because I mean, if you want just to write a web app, you can use Dart for it if you like to. I mean, think Google does, because that was the kind of if you know the history of Dart was kind of what was planned to be the TypeScript, but it would never landed there.
So I mean, in the end, it's not the holy grail of like mobile development where you can do everything, and everything is
the fun
beautiful. So I mean, it's another very interesting approach with shipping the rendering engine with the app itself. So I think that's kind of the really the nice stuff that's happening right there. So.
Good. Yeah. Okay, so it's right now still in beta, right? So it's pretty normal.
It's still beta.
So can you switch the presentation back to? I think are we finished? Any more questions?
Questions?
Okay.
Questions. One there.
I mean, there's questions. So
many questions
lead to more questions, right?
Yes.
And I think we'll pretty much
yeah.
What is the minimum Android API level requirement?
That's your question, not mine.
Oh, I'm not sure. It's 16 or 19. But if you want to use the camera stuff, the camera plugin, then it's 21. So, but it's 4.4. So yes, that's and for
right.
Yes.
I guess we'll wrap up and get some drinks. And
so we just put the slides on. But thank you both very much, Patrice and Renato. Excellent presentation. So I'm gonna invite you guys back here when you can do the stuff in ARKit, right? Because the next presentation we're gonna do is gonna actually be on augmented reality again, and it's gonna be like how you can actually use ARKit to actually start mapping out rooms and turning rooms into virtual reality and augmented reality. It's gonna be on the 23rd of the 5th, so we'll be here again. So you're very welcome to come here, you guys too. Yeah, I mean, that's my current, like, one of my favorite interests is actually the whole AR stuff. Hence my nasty questions. I'm sorry about that. But where's the thing? Is it right? So basically, you're all very welcome there, and thank you all very much for coming, and thank you very much for speaking. It was an excellent presentation, very interesting, very entertaining. I love the style with the backwards and talking and the questioning. So save the questioning for afterwards. And yeah, thank you all for coming, and please enjoy the drinks.